Greetings from the grounds of Eutaw Springs Battlefield. The last important battle fought in the state of South Carolina. The reason this is a very important battle, because of this skirmish here, and it was a serious skirmish, this forced the British troops back to the city of Charleston, where they stayed to the end of the war. And here you can see some of the monuments and some of the markers of what took place on these grounds here. And I want to show you this little marker right here. It's pretty interesting. This is kind of describes what the soldiers looked like in this battle. And on the right here is a reenactor of the British Army, the 64th Regiment. And it says it suffered more casualties in the Battle of Eutaw Springs here than in any other action it fought during the Revolution. And the middle photo is the American militia, and then the main forces of the American armies down here in the south was this guy here, and most of them, you can see they wore hunting frocks and rough-looking garments that adapted to for the area. A lot of the stuff was homemade, and a lot of their weapons were their own. And the commander of the forces here is Nathaniel Greene. And Nathaniel Greene was one of General Washington's best generals. He was with General Washington from the very beginning. He started as a quartermaster, but he was self-taught. And he learned somewhat 20 years earlier in the French and Indian War, but he was extremely valuable. And towards the end of the war, or the last 2 years of the war, General Washington sent General Nathaniel Greene to the south to try to push Lord Cornwallis out of the south, which actually happened because of the battles and the skirmishes in South Carolina. And there were a bunch. There were over 200 skirmishes here, but the major battles were at Eutaw Springs here, the Battle of Cowpens, Kings Mountains, the Battle of Camden. Extremely important battles, because Cornwallis of the southern armies for the British was forced to move up to North Carolina, and then in the Virginia Yorktown, where he eventually surrendered. And let me kind of turn this around. And this is just a portion of the battlefield. And what's unique here, of course, now we see beautiful live oak trees and so forth. But one of the things so amazing here when you walk these battlefields is how peaceful they are. And it's just hard to imagine the carnage and the fighting. And it was just hell on earth, because a lot of the tactics, they would line up and face each other. They would fire their muskets. Then after that, they would do a bayonet charge. And you know, that wasn't fun, just brutal. But in this battle, there was, the American Army had 2,200 soldiers. The British had about 2,000, so it was evenly split. The casualties were about a little over 1,400, which is about a 35% casualty rate. And that is brutal. I mean, brutal, brutal, brutal. What's unique about these battles and the American Revolution and the Americans here fighting for their independence, and of course, the heritage, they had British heritage, but there came a point when, obviously, when they said enough is enough and they wanted their own independence. And the unique thing about this, that we lose so much in history of who the people were that signed the Declaration of Independence on July 4th, 1776. These just weren't individuals that just on a whim, let's just go ahead and do this and let's get independence and see what happens. They were extremely, extremely wealthy people of prominence. You had George Washington, the wealthiest planter in Virginia. John Hancock, the wealthiest shipper in Massachusetts. You had John Adams, you had Benjamin Franklin, you had Thomas Jefferson. These were people that had incredible influence and wealth. And they knew when they signed the Declaration of Independence, they signed their death warrant. Because King George III made it clear in a letter sent to the Second Continental Congress, if this rebellion or insurgence doesn't stop, you're going to be executed. And I think Benjamin Franklin was the one that quoted the words that said, surely If we don't hang all together, we will hang separately. So it was serious. And to kind of put things in perspective, these were people, men, that had everything to lose. They did not have to do this. And I mean by everything to lose, can you imagine if Warren Buffett, Jeff Bezos, the guy with Amazon, Mark Zuckerberg, Facebook, Bill Gates, if they signed a document, when signing the document, they knew that they would not only lose everything that they have, they would be put to death. That's what these founding fathers believed. And not only that, which I think one of the things that's lost so much in history, and I don't know why it isn't recommended more in our education system, is our Constitution. It is amazing if you read that thing. It really is. We're not a perfect country, but what they did had never been done before in the history of the world. And as a matter of fact, since the first Constitution, we now have 27 amendments, which means if something isn't right, and it wasn't right, we had slavery and other things that were just hard to fathom now, us looking back. So they would add an amendment to change or correct or set up a guidepost or a template to give us a better government. And that's what's unique about America and our founding fathers. What they did and what they tried to do for this new country, to get it off the ground and try to make it unique and prosperous for everybody. And again, we're not perfect, but we're about as good as anything else out there, and we're still trying to correct it and adapt it. So anyway, so history just to me is just truly amazing because, and I've said this before, these people were just like us. They had hopes, fears, wants, desires, dreams, and they just tried to make not only their life better, but their posterity, the generations after them, better. So this is a neat place. I love doing this, so just enjoy it so much. So thanks for coming along with the silver-haired traveler, and I will see what else we can find in the future. And until then, be safe, be smart, and God bless.